This isn't just another podcast, it's a deep dive into the world of beauty, wellness, and longevity. Now, we're here to discuss what beauty really means beyond just appearances. We'll also talk about wellness, the habits and practices that keep us healthy, full of energy. And we'll explore the topic of longevity, looking at the science and realities of living a long, fulfilling life. So sit back, relax, and join us as we go beyond the mirror. Welcome back to Beyond the Mirror. I am here today with Jennifer Warmann-Bloss, and John Zarbock. So we are going to be talking today about movement and how that plays into our health and wellness and longevity. We're going to hit topics of osteopenia, which is a very talked about subject right now, and then how you can build muscle and strengthen your body utilizing a very unique process. And so, welcome, John. And I'm going to let Jennifer take it away because you've got some amazing questions for him.
Well, and I do want to hit on the beauty of what John does is a longevity thing, and that's a
Yes.
topic that we care very much about. So, if you want to live into a long age, what he's about to discuss is very relevant to you. You want to feel good older. And so we're really excited to have you here with us, John. So why don't we start with how you got to what you're doing right now? So, what we're going to talk about is a different type of workout, one that you've probably never heard of. And it's a shame because it's an amazing workout. And Dina and I both do it.
It is my most favorite.
I actually look forward to it in many, many ways, in many
Me
aspects.
too. And that's a bonus for me. That doesn't happen with regular workouts for me.
Exactly. So, John, how did you get to where you are in the workout space? Let's start with that, and then we'll talk next about what it is that you do.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, it's kind of a long story, but I'll make it as condensed as I can. So essentially, um, I was a conventional trainer starting in about 2016. I've been in the military. I'm in the Army. I've been in for 21 years, and I was a fitness coach and instructor, and I was a trainer, fitness trainer for a lot of soldiers, just because I love doing it. Because exercise has really always been a very big part of my life, but as a young man, not necessarily for what I would say is like the most productive reasons or the right reasons. It was really more of an ego thing for me. It was very aesthetically driven, and so when I took a break from being full time in the military in 2016, from 2016 to 2019, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't really know myself very well outside of the military because it's all I'd ever done. And I didn't know what my passion was, but I knew that I loved exercise. And I knew that I really had a proclivity to wanting to work with people and make them stronger and better because it felt good to me. So when I first started this, it was a very selfish endeavor in the sense that I love doing it so much that I wanted to get the feeling of helping people, and then them being helped was just the byproduct, of that, which I guess is good. It's a win-win. And so I just did what I was taught and what I had researched and learned and done myself, which was, you do squats and deadlifts and bench presses and dumbbell curls and all the CrossFit stuff because I was a very amateur, CrossFit competitor and bodybuilder, for a bunch of years. And so I just applied what I knew worked for me to other people. And it was, going pretty well. Until I deployed again for my third time in 2017. I got called up and went back overseas. And so I had to close basically my business and stop training. And when I got back, I made a pretty hard decision to not continue to do the Army full time. So now I'm part time in the National Guard, but I had to figure out what I was going to do. And so I rebooted my personal training company. And in the process of doing that, I discovered this really weird way of working out called high intensity training. And I discovered these amazing machines, this technology that we now use at BioFit, called adaptive resistance exercise machines. And it's just a motorized way of doing weight training, essentially, because you're not using weights, you're just fighting against a motor. But the claims that they made were so outrageous to me that you could get stronger and better and feel better and develop muscular endurance in like 20 minutes a week. It just that sounded so ridiculous and gimmicky to me that it it made me want to basically do enough research on that topic or on those machines to basically prove it wrong. Like it affected me in this really weird way because I just got so almost insulted that I was spending 20 plus hours every single week for the last 20 years of my life in order to look the way that I looked, feel the way that I feel, and all of this expertise that I felt like I had accumulated. And you're telling me that you've got something that I can condense from 20 hours down to 20? Like,
So that's so funny. When I brought the M Sculpt machine in originally, I was like, I brought it in so I could disprove it. I did.
That's funny.
I'm like, I'm gonna bring this machine in. We're gonna demo it. I'm gonna find everything that's wrong with it, and it can't be real. And also, no one's gonna pay $2,000 for abs. And I was like, this is not gonna happen, right? And then we all got on the machine, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
We all have abs.
oh, this is crazy. 30
That's
minutes a
awesome.
week on a machine, and you've got amazing core strength. And so I know that's a different type of technology, but conceptually, I understand I'm going to try to prove it wrong,
Yeah.
concept,
Yeah.
you know? So it's interesting that you kind of
right.
dove into this, like, this can't be real.
Yeah, I mean, I was the ultimate skeptic. And so what I did was I drove to Nashville the day because I spent all night when I found out about this machine. It was an advertisement on the internet, and I spent the next probably 8 hours finding anything and everything that I could possibly find about the machines, where they came from, how are they developed, what problem were they trying to solve, and all these things. But after that research, I got so obsessed with this claim that the very next day I woke up and I drove to Nashville, Tennessee, which was the closest city that I could find with one of these machines in it. And I showed up, and I was bound and determined. My ego was at full blast, and it was, I'm going to prove this machine wrong. I'm going to beat this thing, and it's not gonna take me. And it was the most humbling experience of my entire life because in 3 minutes, I received the most full, complete, exhausting exercise to almost getting sick. Like I was almost throwing up because I was so fatigued of my entire life.
Correct.
You were just
That's
trained. That's how you have to do it to disprove it. But like, we aren't working out like that on the regular, at least not to the throwing up feeling.
no.
Yeah.
You are correct. It is possible. It's possible to do that, but but I came in with such intensity and such, just again, such skepticism that, but that's how I was used to working out anyway. Like whether it was going to be regular conventional weight training or CrossFit or, running a PT test, right, for the Army, which was back in that time, push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run. It didn't matter what I was doing for exercise. If I wasn't feeling nauseous by the end of the thing, then I just didn't think it was, worth it, which again is very military, very ego. That's not what's required for 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 productive process, right? Or productive results. But anyway, but I was so unbelievably taken aback and impressed. And once I was able to process what happened, I realized, oh, I'm not doing this right. Like there's a better way. The technology is available for me to be able to help people in a way that I don't ever have to worry about hurting them. I don't ever have to worry about them doing the exercise wrong or being in some weird position where they're going to, twist a knee or mess up their shoulder, which are very common injuries, with a lot of, conventional type of training. And it has feedback. It has a software AI feedback mechanism to actually tell me how I'm doing. Like I know in real time whether or not I'm actually working at my maximum capacity of like what my body is capable of doing, and I'm not able to hurt myself doing it. So like it just made immediate sense to me, literally, figuratively, and conceptually. And so like 6 weeks later, I basically emptied out my bank account and bought two of these machines and was convinced that like I needed to be the savior of St. Louis, and bring this technology to the city to be the first adopter. And that was 5 years ago, and that was 3 studio locations ago, and that was 203 clients ago. So, so here we are.
So can you elaborate exactly how the equipment works? Like, so when I first met you and you were explaining to me the concept of it, it's like very visual. It's almost like somebody needs to see it in motion because it
And experience it, I think. Yeah,
yeah,
but
it's different.
it is very different.
Um, can you explain, like, people can't see a video because we're mostly audio based. How would you describe the process of a workout on the devices? So it's interesting to me when you actually, like, I loved that you did a demonstration for us first and kind of allowed us to feel the device because again it is hard to describe, but the way I would describe it is to say it's that, like, what draws me to it is the lack of being able to injure yourself and getting the full force in. And, maybe you can even
Yeah.
elaborate further.
I So me and my daughter both go, and she had been going to a regular gym for years, almost every single day.
Same with my son.
Yeah. And didn't see really the results she was wanting. And then we start BioFit, and within 2 weeks, she's like, I have muscles that I've been trying to get for 2 years. And so I then was like, "Oh my goodness." And you left there feeling like you got a really good workout. You were challenged, but you weren't injured.
It was efficient
It was
also.
super efficient. Yeah, and I was like, "Look, we're really putting effort out for like 8 minutes of the 20 to 30 that I'm there, and here I am getting this great workout." When I explain it to people, I say it's like resistance training with no break. So you you work, yes, against a machine, but there's no downtime. So at least like at some point when you're doing exercise, you've got that recovery where, if you're doing an arm curl, when you go back down, you're working different muscle groups and you get a little bit of a break. Well, you don't really get that with the machine because you're
Right. There's no
constantly in a
pause.
pull.
There's
There's
no
no pause.
pause. Yeah.
None whatsoever. And that puts you into fatigue faster. And all you need to do is fatigue your muscles and you've got the workout that you need. And so
Well,
that's how I explain it to people. But
I would definitely say, and I would love for you to elaborate on this, John. When you say muscle fatigue, I think to some people that's a scary, like, that sounds scary. Like, you're going to work out to muscle fatigue. But when you actually do it, the realization
way.
of that is not as scary. So can you kind of explain about working out to muscle failure without it being terrifying?
Yes.
So it is hard to explain. You're right, which is a challenge, for us as a business, because if you can't explain something so that somebody can understand it, then the chances of them trying it are very, very slim. This is really something that, unfortunately, you have to experience, see, or feel in order to really understand. It's like trying to explain what hot means to a child. Whereas if you just have them touch something hot and you say that's hot, then they'll know for the rest of their life what hot means, right? Um, so it's motorized resistance. So you have basically you have handles and accessories that you would use in a regular gym environment, right? So like if you're going to do a bench press, you're going to have handles to hold on to. If you're going to do a pull down, right, for your lats or your your biceps or whatever, then you're going to have something that you're pulling on, but you're not fighting gravity the way that you are when you're using weights. You're fighting a machine, and the machine is basically coming at you and then retracting away from you, and you're basically trying to make the motor of the machine move faster when it's coming towards you, which is impossible to do, yet you still want to continue to try doing it. And then you want to stop the machine from escaping you as it's retracting away from you. So you're pulling as hard as you can to try to stop this motor, which again is impossible to do, but we still try. And then there's a sensor that basically is a immediate feedback to tell you how many force pounds are you producing at any given time of what your range of motion is. And when you have thoroughly fatigued your muscles to the most productive point of being tired, then the algorithm on the machine tells us when to do that or when that is. And then that's when we stop the exercise so that there's no diminishing return of the actual time and effort that you're spending. And you don't do any more damage to your muscle tissue than you absolutely need to get the results that you want. Biochemical, metabolic, like reaction in the body that happens when you expose it to certain stimuli, right? Like if it gets too cold, you shiver. And shivering is a function of the body's involuntary, because you don't have to tell your body to shiver, right? So like if you're cold, the body has to generate heat. So it shivers. There is a certain level of stimulus and damage that the muscle tissue must endure or sustain in order to give you stronger muscles. It's so there is damage that must be done on a tissue level in order to generate stronger muscles, right?
That occurs when we do weight training. It is the same tear down, what in quotes, of the muscle that we're actually getting when
However, when I was working out before, I don't ever remember working out to where I couldn't lift the weight or I couldn't squat anymore.
me either.
So it is a different experience. It's easier than what I was doing,
Yeah.
you know. And John, I know you've elaborated to me before, and maybe you can explain this here also. There's actually a disadvantage to doing 30 reps of something for your body versus this workout to failure in a couple of minutes. So,
So there's a lot of studies out there that will absolutely support the idea that less is more, in the sense that you want to be able to find it's called hypertrophy. That's like the scientific name for basically muscle fatigue, right? There is a point in which you want to experience an adequate amount of hypertrophy in the muscle where the muscle is unable to perform what it is that your brain is trying to tell it to do, right? The reason why conventional training isn't as effective and or efficient than this particular machine with the technology is because when you think about, you use the bicep curl as an example, which is a perfect example. Depending on the angle of where your elbow joint is, like if your fist is pulled all the way up to like where your shoulder is, and the ability for you to produce or resist force, meaning the weight, the gravitational pull of the weight, changes depending on what the angle of your elbow is. So your ability to pull weight towards your shoulder from the floor, you have less ability, you are less strong in doing that with the amount of weight than you are to hold it close to your shoulder and stop it from falling to the floor. And it's because of the way that your muscle fibers are designed in your body. And that goes for every muscle of your body. So you will always, and so for example, a bench press is probably for people's like visual, a bench press or a squat is going to be the easiest thing to probably for somebody to picture. If I put, let's just call 300 pounds on your chest and told you to push it off of you one time, then you might be able to do that one time. But you're limited at what point are you the strongest of the entire, like if your hands are next to your chest as opposed to your hands being fully extended away from you, you're going to have different abilities of producing that force or that strength through that range of motion. But if you were to put your arms all the way out and I laid something that weighed 300 pounds on them, your ability to prevent that amount of weight from crushing you and stopping it from coming back towards the ground is much higher. And so what the machine does an amazing job of that no weight machine has the ability to do or to replicate is giving you the ability to use your muscles and damage them on a tissue level through that hypertrophy in a way that you can go positively and negatively in both directions with the perfect amount of resistance or the perfect amount of weight the entire time through your range of motion. And so what happens is when you go to I say all that to say, when you're in a conventional gym or you're using conventional methods or weights, the weight is fixed. So you're stuck with just one particular set of weight resistance. And what happens is that throughout your range of motion, you become underloaded. Most people aren't using enough weight in order to work the muscles that they're trying to work because they're guessing on how much weight they should be using. And they're not taking each set to failure. They're only going until it starts to burn or maybe it gets a little bit uncomfortable. But what's really fascinating, exactly, and that's what I was getting ready to say. What's really fascinating is that most people, and again, this is somewhat unconscious. I'm not saying that they're doing anything wrong or that there's anything bad about them because they just don't know. I didn't know any better either because it was what I was taught. It's what I was told. It's what all the magazines told me. So I was just doing what I thought was right. But you have people that are spending more energy and time just going through a prescribed workout of say 3 sets of 10. I'm going to do 3 sets of 10. Well, do you want to do 3 sets of 10 of a chest press, or do you want to fatigue your pecs to the point where they're going to get stronger and bigger? Like which one of those things are the most important? Because it shouldn't matter how many reps and sets you do, right? So they get wrapped around. I got to do 3 sets of 10. I got to do 10 sets of 5 or whatever. So what ends up happening is they underload. They use less weight, which means they have to do more sets. And the more sets you're doing, the more damage you're doing to the tissue. So what happens is they end up overtraining. They end up doing more damage to their particular muscle than they need to do. And because in a conventional environment, you don't have a mechanism, that a feedback loop of, have I given the muscle enough stimulus to force it to have to regrow, right? It's always been a guessing game up until now with these machines. So people are underloading, they're overtraining literally in that one session, and then they're going back 2 or 3 days later, 4 days later, and they're trying to use the same muscle groups that they've already damaged and they haven't rejuvenated yet. So it's like going into the sun, getting a great tan, but then thinking, okay, I'm going to go back out tomorrow and I'm going to get an even better tan. I'm going to tan 10 times better. Well, you don't tan better, you burn. And once you're sunburned, well, now you can't go out in the sun at all because it hurts and you're only going to do more damage to your skin. So, like,
Yes, and actually, it's interesting what you're like. The reason I definitely wanted to have you on is after learning what happens to the world. I think it happened to you, it happened to me, it happened to Dena. Once you see that there's this other way to do it, then you look at the old way and you're like, why? Like, why were we doing it like that?
Yeah.
Why did I
Never going
never
back.
why did I never question that?
Yeah.
And BioFit's not the only workout I do. I also do hot works, which is like infrared sauna, but it's more yeah, it's more yoga and isometric, and it's not as much muscle work. And they marry beautifully together.
Yeah.
Um
imagine if there was an ARX machine in a Hotworks. I've thought about that. I have a Hotworks membership as well, and I go from time to time, and I use the sauna, and I use the bikes, and I'll do my stretches, or I'll do some very light, calisthenic stuff in there. I think it's great. I think Hotworks, of all of the other like options out there, beyond obviously like what BioFit does, I think Hotworks is the best. I love it.
at resistance training in hot works, you're doing isometric. In yours, you're doing weights to muscle failure. These are longevity exercises.
Yes.
Like when we talk about longevity, what you should be thinking about is when you're 70 and you want to pick up a puppy or your grandchild or something off the floor, the skill that you need is all comes from that resistance training. It comes from what you're doing, it comes from isometric, calisthenic, that kind of thing. That's how you live longer and feel better. And for me, since I started doing your workout, I have less back pain. I used to get tingling in my hands that has dissipated. Like it has, and I feel strong. And I should also say I feel strong, but I don't look like a big bulky mess. Cause like one thing when you say to women about working out to muscle failure,
Yeah.
the first thought,
You're gonna look like Miss Fitness.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's not what happens. It's more you're building strength, and it's beautiful. And it's a beautiful thing to be strong as a man or a woman as you age. And so that leads me to like talking about how this helps with things like osteopenia and osteoporosis and all of that.
Yeah, strength, muscular strength, skeletal muscular strength is the number one biomarker for whether or not someone is going to live longer healthily. Meaning, it's not the indicator for lifespan, because we all know people who have taken terrible care of themselves and it can live until their 90s, right? With like skilled nursing and memory care and nursing homes and all these things. But when you talk about being able to increase your health span and you're 70, 80, 90 years old and you can still function, right? You can still, when your brain asks your body to do something like pick up a puppy, play with your grandkids, carrying groceries from the car, pour milk, you know. Side note, like super caveat, literally just happened to me yesterday, and it was like he's my favorite client because it's the most rewarding for me. This guy Joe, he's a client of mine, 78 years old. He's hunched over. When he walks, he stares at the ground because his back is that like humped over.
Curve. Yeah.
Yeah, kyphosis.
So how does that help prevent the forward progress of osteopenia? Like I have a client who just got diagnosed. If I got her to come in and start working out with you, how could you I know you can't reverse it is my understanding, but how can you reduce her forward progression of the disease?
Yeah, I would say I could help to prevent the forward regression, meaning that after about the age of 40, and for women sometimes it's sooner depending on how active they were as a child, your bone density is only going down forever, right? Like we're always aging. All of us are always aging, unless you're Brian Johnson and you have, $300 million and you can reverse your age, chronotype back down to like 18. If you guys don't know who Brian Johnson is, I highly recommend looking him up.
I do, but he looks crazy. Like I don't
Benjamin Button.
personally what he's doing and how he has to live his existence to me is like that's too much. Like sometimes it is too much of a good thing. And I understand what he's trying to accomplish. And it's cool that someone's testing those things out. Like I have an appreciation for his desire to reverse chronological aging. And that will lead to things that help us all. But like the way he has to live to do it is so it's not living. But he's measuring all the metrics, which is super cool through actual labs and things. He's measuring what work. This actually works, and here's the data to go with it.
Yeah, I agree. I feel the exact you put it perfectly. I am so grateful that there is a person like him out there who is willing to sacrifice. This is how I look at it. Willing to sacrifice his life, his quality of life, his selfish personal desires and all the things in order to donate himself and his experience to science and to the rest of us and live that ridiculous life that almost no one else could ever maintain because it's not even plausible to live life happily.
Life, lifetime, and financially, they're like most of it. Yeah.
Yeah, just all the things. But I'm very grateful that he is willing to do that for the rest of us and for further generations because the information, and I believe he's actually said so himself. Like he realizes that what he's doing and how he's doing it is not feasible for 99% of the population. But that's not the point. The point isn't necessarily it's possible. What he's going to be able to do is he's going to be able to, on a biological level, make himself younger, right? The body is going to think that it's younger, and that's amazing. But anyways, so unless you're somebody like him, when it comes to the bone density stuff, you're only going down. Uh, it's just a matter of how slowly or how quickly is your bone density going down. And so, when you think about the density of the bone, right, the more holes and space in the bone, then the less dense it is. And the only way to put density into the bone tissue, a lot of people kind of forget that bone is tissue. It's just very hard tissue. It's skin tissue, organ tissue, muscle tissue, brain tissue. You have bone tissue. The only way to strengthen bone tissue or to make bone tissue grow more is to put an exorbitant amount of pressure into it, right? So you have to push against something very hard and you have to hold it and withstand that pressure into the skeleton long enough and hard enough so that the stimulus, the signal that the body is receiving is, I need to be able to do what the brain is asking me to do, and at this moment I can't, right? And when the moment you stop pushing because you either it's too uncomfortable, or you just get to the point where you literally can't push anymore, but yet you're still alive, right? Then the body will react without your help, and it will start to adapt, and it will fashion itself around having stronger bone, because that's the signal that you're giving your body. We need to be able to do this thing. Okay, this thing is really hard, or we can't do this thing. All right, well, when I'm sleeping and if I have adequate nutrition, right, and I don't have my cortisol levels crazy high, and I'm not constantly in fight or flight, and the body is in a relaxed theta state of being able to rejuvenate. Well, when the rejuvenation process happens, then your bone is going to get stronger, right? And so that's essentially how osteopenia and osteoporosis can be mitigated from a what happens to the bone. Now, how does strength training fit into all of that? Well, when you have muscles and the muscles move, the stronger your muscles are, the more lean and the more dense and the more strong your muscles are when you move your body, when you move your joints around, the stronger the pull is on the bone. So the stronger your muscles, the stronger inevitably your bones must be to handle the strength of the muscle when it's elongating and contracting, right? So when you're doing the proper amount of strength training or the proper type of strength training, specifically with these types of machines, and you don't have to use these machines to do this. It's just these machines, the ARX machines, have the safest and the best way to do it currently. Is you're pushing the pressure that you're putting into your bones through your hands and your feet and all the things is enough to trigger that adaptive change with your bone density, and it is strengthening your muscles to the point where they're going to be pulling on your bones stronger. So you actually get double the productive positive stimulus to helping with osteopenia, osteoporosis, and pre-osteopenia over time. So there's no way, you're absolutely right as well, there is no way to better your bone density. Like, that is not real. Now there might be like a few select humans who have, been the exception to the rule. I'd love to meet them. I'd love to see the research on where someone's bone density over the course of, say, a year, 2 years, 5 years has went up more than like 3 or 4 tenths of a point, right? I have yet to be able to find that information. So if somebody has it and wants to like prove me wrong and call me crazy, then I'd love to see it. Please share it. But you don't increase bone density. You stop it from decreasing so quickly. And the way that you have to do that is you've got to make your body really uncomfortable. And you basically have to ask your body to do something that it is almost incapable of doing, so that that adaptive biological physiological change happens, so that the next time you try to do it, it is easier for the body to do, because the body wants to do what the brain asks it to do. It really wants to, but sometimes it just can't.
Yeah, it's even in that, when we're talking about doing the ARX workout, like one of the things that I've noticed that's significantly different than old workouts is that when I would be muscle fatigued or I'd be sore after the workout, it was like a type of sore that was uncomfortable. And when I'm sore from your workout, I still feel it, but I feel energetic from it.
Yeah.
Like I feel
Yes.
more alert and awake, and it's just different.
It is different, and it's like you got a really good workout, and you know it and you feel it,
right, which I've done before in a
Yeah,
million other ways,
I have too.
but I didn't feel awake from it.
Yeah,
I made me feel tired more or
yeah,
worn out. Or I
yeah.
used to say, "Oh my gosh, I feel old
Oh,
from my workout."
ouch.
And so I don't have that experience with this. The it's just a really different and unique experience. And I do like that you put out the machine is called the ARX so that people that aren't in the St. Louis area can maybe try to find someone that has what you're doing. Although I know you're really breaking ground on this, there's not a lot of places that have this yet. But it is a revolutionary, and it's making me now look at my friends posting videos of them killing themselves at the gym, and actually I have fear for them because there's a high risk of injury in those scenarios.
Huge.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like, highest risk of injury really does come from when you're the most tired. Because what happens is, again, the body wants to do what the brain asks it to do. And when you've been working out for, say, an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, or whatever, you are really tired. And sometimes your muscles are more tired than you think they are because there's a lot going on. You've got dopamine, you've got adrenaline, you've got human growth hormone that's like surging through your veins, that the pituitary gland is releasing while you're, doing the endorphins are pumping, and so like you're a lot more tired and you have a lot more damage that has been done than you think. And so when you get really tired, you start to sacrifice form. And when you're dealing with an environment, at least this is my experience, and it's obviously something that I talk to with my clients that have kind of I've been able to convert into my little biofit cult. um, it's like your when the body gets asked to do what the brain is telling it and the body can't do it, then the body is going to move itself. It will contort itself and activate whatever muscle that is needed in order to comply with the demand from the brain. And when you're really tired and you're just moving around, and if you don't have the strict form that's required to target the muscle that is intended to be being worked for whatever exercise that you're doing, and you put yourself in a position where you are outside of the correct structural form to work that muscle, that is when injuries happen. And then what happens is you're looking around, and this is, and I'm not saying this applies to everybody. I don't want to like over generalize, but I would say for the most, if people are honest with themselves, this is probably pretty common. I think a lot of people, when they're exercising at a regular conventional gym, they are really interested in what other people are doing while they're working out. Like, are people looking at me? Is my gym crush checking me out? And am I going to be able to like do this rep or get through this thing? And is the weight that I'm using impressive enough? Right. I think there's a lot more of that going on out there than what people are really willing to admit. And the reason I know that is because that was me. Right. I did that. That was my behavior. If I was at the gym, if I was at Club Fitness, or at the time I was at Powerhouse, and there was a really cute girl that walked in, and when she walked in, it was her leg day, and she went over to the Smith machine or to the squat rack, and I happened to be doing my back day that day. Well, depending on how much my level of attractiveness to her was, my back day just became leg day.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought up sacrificing form, and this is one of the things that I also love about BioFit is working out in the gym by myself. Before, I would recruit my accessory muscles because it's easier to do that than to endure the pain. So, yeah, and so I think this is where a lot of people are as well. And one of the things that I love about BioFit is when I meet with Logan, he's like, "You're going to need to drop your shoulders." drop your shoulders. He's constantly on me, drop your shoulders.
Pump out your
Yes,
chest.
put
Pump
your
out your
chest out,
chest.
So I love that having the trainer constantly remind me of how to maintain my form is really key. Number one, to get the results that I'm looking for, but number two, to not be injured.
Yeah. Yeah, exercise. So like this is a really kind of a foreign concept to me, not so much now because I've been doing this for 5 years, but this concept to me would have been completely ridiculous had you met me 6 years ago. There's a really famous quote by a guy named Arthur Jones, and he's like the father. He's the inventor of the discoverer of high intensity training. And he's without him, the ARX machine would have never been thought of. And he developed high intensity training back in like the 60s. He was the original inventor of the Nautilus machines. So if you've ever heard of or seen Nautilus, the original form of that machine, he came up with. So he's a very important individual, not a very good person, in my opinion. I think he's very obnoxious as a human being, but like his contribution to fitness is amazing. But his saying was, if you enjoy exercise, you're doing it wrong. And so, and what I think he meant by that is exercise is not designed with the point of exercise is to produce a stimulus in the body that is very uncomfortable, very unsatisfying, and something that is going to signal you to want to quit and stop. Because that is what is required. Very uncomfortable things is what's required for real change to happen. And I think like even metaphysically, I think you can agree with that, like on a emotional, mental, spiritual level. But when you're doing a strict movement and you're keeping your form, like there's nothing fun about that, right? Like it's very vanilla, right? It's very clinical in a way. But like the results that you get from adhering to that strictness of form and routine are exponentially better than any results that you'll ever get just flailing around weights or dropping bumper plates on the floor, doing butterfly pull-ups and all those things.
Yeah, that is really what we've experienced. And so, um,
So we are gonna go ahead and wrap this up, but we want to have you on again because I think there's more to explore here.
yeah, absolutely.
And we'll make sure to include your information on the show notes. But can you just tell people how they can reach you if
Yeah, so our website is biofitstl.com. Um, our handle on all of our social is BioFitSTL. I usually tend to just send people to YouTube because that's where the majority of the content resides. That's where you can find testimonials. That's where you can find videos of me explaining the machines. That's where a lot of my podcasts are that I've done. Or if you just Google or do a YouTube search for ARX, adaptive resistance exercise. There are studios like mine and brave souls that are blazing trails all around the country. Not as many as I would like yet. It's still very new and disruptive, but it's getting out there. But our handle is just BioFitSTL. You type that into any social platform, and you should be able to find us. Well, if there's anybody that's listening that's in the St. Louis area, we have 3 locations, and we offer the first 2 sessions completely free, no pressure, no risk. I just want people to show up and try the machine. And it might not be a good fit for them, and that's okay. Like we're not high pressure sales. I just want as many people to understand what this is and have it as an option so that they know that it at least exists. And once that happens, if this is something that they think would work for them, I'm more than happy to figure out, how we can help. But my prime objective for every day of my life is just how many new people can I expose to this amazing technology, and which is why, like I said, we give the first two sessions are completely complimentary, and there's no pressure whatsoever to join. So I would just invite everyone to just come and try it.
I so appreciate you coming on. I think your information is extremely valuable. We hope that those that are listening will consider sharing this with other people and giving us a review and liking, and that's what we need. We're in our infancy right now and we need some love. But also you have such an innovative concept that more people should know about. So we do hope that people will share and continue to spread the word. And thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Mirror. Before we dive into today's episode, we want to make a quick but important disclosure. The information and advice shared in this podcast are intended to provide general knowledge and understanding about wellness and health-related subjects. They are not intended to replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or qualified health provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new health regimen. Remember, your health is your responsibility, and it's always best to consult with a healthcare